Let's see. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of new music going on this week, so, I think it might be a high time for a good top 10. So let's try something a little bit different. This time, since I've covered a lot of metal stuff and a lot of progressive rock stuff, I'm going to cover a top 10 of non-metal and non-progressive rock music. To help narrow this down, I'm going to choose the top 10 albums released between 2010 and 2014. So these are albums that I thoroughly enjoyed and either looked forward to or was very surprised about. Each of these albums I come back to and I re-listen to over and over and over again, and they're among some of my favorites. I figured, why not just count them down? It was a really difficult task actually remembering all of those albums that weren't either progressive rock in some way or weren't metal. And in progressive rock, I'm also counting a lot of those experimental, ambient noise, post-rock albums such as Mogwai or Explosions in the Sky or Godspeed. So I've left those guys alone. I might do my own top 10 of those later. So let's just count them down. So at number 10, we have Milo Oxylodo by Coldplay, and I believe that's how you pronounce it. To this day, I'm still not 100% sure. This actually is not my favorite Coldplay album. I am a fan of Coldplay, I will put that out there. Yes, I do like Coldplay. I enjoyed Viva La Vida. That was probably my favorite album by them, and I loved X and Y. So when they put out Moxiloto, I was excited, and I also wasn't disappointed. I know a lot of people were disappointed at the new approach, but I loved how Coldplay approached each album completely differently than the last. I like how each album has a unifying sound, and I actually really connected with the sounds that were brought onto this. It was very happy, it was very optimistic, it was very uplifting and boppy. There's a lot of really great songs on that one. I do love Waterfall. I love the opening track. The two opening tracks I thought were a great oomph. So yeah, and I still come back to it day after day. Like if I'm looking for something to pick me up, something to get me going, something to, lift my spirits, that's one that I'll go to. Number 9, Random Access Memories by Daft Punk. Now, I have a very strange relationship with Daft Punk. I missed their big era back in the early 2000s. Again, I was mainly into progressive rock, and I kind of shunned anything outside of that. So when discography was out and when their self-titled work was out and when everybody was really getting into their stuff, especially like the Harder, Faster, Play Harder, that song, and Around the World, when those essential Daft Punk songs were out, everybody was just like flipping out and being like, isn't this amazing? I'm like, yeah, it's okay, but I mean, have you listened to Genesis? When they dropped Random Access Memories, I don't know, I was at work, and I think I was streaming it off of one of the streaming sites that I used at the time, and I just needed something to focus in, because this was like a very data entry heavy time for me at work, and I just needed something to buckle down and get me through the work. And because it was much more subdued and a much more subtle album, I really connected with it, especially Giorgio on Giorgio. I love that song, and how that song builds up. I mean, it's got some classic progressive movements in that. And Contact, the ending song on that album, it still gives me chills. I mean, it's brilliant. It's a work of genius on that album. And I also love the opening track. The opening track is a really great way of setting the stage of, opening the curtains with that opening few notes, and then bringing it down just a bit. Just, getting the funk going, getting the grooves on. And I also like Lucky, Get Lucky. Again, a very good moving track. It's not quite my jam, but it is a tasty jam nonetheless. So I still love listening to that album. If I need something just a little bit softer, a little bit more subdued, I'll turn my ears to that one. Number 8, Al Apocalypse by Weird Al Yankovic. I would arguably say this album has some of his best work in terms of his original stuff. Like, I know I've mentioned before when I've been talking about Weird Al, but he always has the two types of songs. He has a straight-up parody where he'll basically change the lyrics of a song and play that song note for note, maybe a bit shorter, but still pretty much play that song note for note and just change the words around and make it a comedy. But where I find that his true genius, and I will say that Weird Al is a genius, but where I find his true genius is when he plays homage to somebody else, where he'll play a song in a certain style of somebody else, And look no further than Alpocalypse for beautiful renditions of this. The examples that I love are CNR. It's a great homage to the White Stripes. It's not a White Stripes song, but it's clearly a White Stripes song, right? Ringtone is a great homage to Queen. Skipper Dan is a great homage to Weezer, and I'm not the biggest fan of Weezer, but I love Skipper Dan in that it's very much like Pork and Beans. Craigslist is a straight up rendition for The Doors, and they even got the keyboardist from The Doors to play on that track. And I remember playing it for my father, and my father's like, "Oh my gosh, this is a Doors song." I'm like, "Actually, it's a Weird Al song that's done in the style of The Doors." He's like, No, I know this song. This is a song by The Doors. I can't put my finger on it." I'm like, "That's because it's an homage to a Doors song way back when." And so I love Alpocalypse because it was such a great album in creating those homage songs, and I don't think he's done quite the same level as other albums. Number 7, The King is Dead by the Decembrances. Okay, so after The Hazards of Love by the Decembrances, I was so pumped for the follow-up. I felt like Decembrances was going further and further and further into progressive rock. Ever since they dropped Picturesque, they followed that one up with The Crane Wife. And I mean, The Crane Wife has 2 songs, arguably 2 songs, that are well over the 10-minute mark. When they put down The Hazards of Love, that was a rock opera from start to finish. I mean, it's basically a single track song covering the entire album. So when The King is Dead was coming out, I'm like, okay, what's their next step? How are they going to follow up this grand beast that was The Hazards of Love? And they pulled the rug out of my feet, and it kind of hurt the first couple of listens. I won't lie, it really kind of hurt when I first listened to this album because it was very folky, very, very folky. Almost touching country at times, especially with Down by the Water. There was not a scratch of progressive rock or prog to be found on The King is Dead. And so at first I was really disappointed with this, but I let the album grow. And the more I listened to it, the more I started to appreciate the scope of musicianship. It was a much more acoustic album. And unlike a lot of those other bands that try their hand in acoustics, the Decembrances are rooted in acoustics. So letting them shine like this was a real treat after I got used to the sound. I remember playing this for one of my friends, and they said that it was a very oaky taste, and especially with that Dear Avery. And that song alone, Dear Avery, is a beautiful piece. It is one of my favorite tracks by the Decembrances. And I'm saddened that it's not getting the appreciation that it deserves, because just that outro alone, it just drifts you off, and it is so good. It's the ability to be so mellow, and yet still being so impactful. I can't help but get moved by Dear Avery. And it's also much more succinct. It's much more an enjoyable listen because it's so short. All the songs can be fit on a regular LP album. And so I like that throwback, to the Crosby, Stills, Nash and those singer-songwriters where all they do can be fit on one album. I love that they were able to scale back and just provide a mouthful of songs that is really enjoyable from start to finish. And so it's because of the packaging, and it's because of that completely different approach to music that I really love that album. And it turned out to be one of my favorite from Decembrances, even though it sounds nothing like a lot of their other stuff. Number 6, Incongruous by Hank Green and the Perfect Strangers. So if you don't know already, I am a huge nerd fighter. I mean, I've got most of John Green's stuff. I've read all of his stuff. And I followed Hank Green, the brother, for a very long time. And in fact, I love Hank's musicianship. I don't think he gets the appreciation that he deserves in the public eye. The music that he creates is beautiful music. And so when Incongruous came out, I of course pre-ordered it, and I of course downloaded it the moment that I could. And I love every single song on this album. It's nerdy. It's fun. How can I describe it outside of it's nerdy? I mean, it's got a punk version of Acro Deathly Hallows. How much more nerdy do you want there? But a lot of the songs are very beautiful. The one song, Video Game Books, if you don't know, and you can miss this, it's very subtle, but essentially it is a love song between Hazel Grace Lancaster and Augustus Waters from The Fault in Our Stars. It's kind of Hazel's love song to Augustus when he lends her the video game books, like novelizations of his favorite video games. And I love when artists do that. I love when they show appreciation to another's work by these very subtle songs. I mean, Video Game Books on its own is a beautiful love song. So you can completely miss the undertone of that album of being more of like a fan letter to The Fault in Our Stars. You can completely miss that and still really enjoy the track because it is a beautiful track. Not only that, but I also love Marilyn Hanson. I feel like that is a beautiful, again, a lot of Hank's slower songs I actually connect to a lot more. And I've said this once, and I'll say it again, and I'll probably say it until I die. It is so much easier to write a slower song than it is to write a faster song. But it is so much more difficult to write a good slower song than it is to write a good faster song. And so with songs like Video Game Books and Marilyn Hanson, these songs are brilliant in capturing what I mean by that. Just from all the fun, because it's balanced by nerdiness, fun, and those subdued moments that I just can't help but love it. Okay, moving on. Next one. Number 5, Danger Days, The True Lives of the Fabulous Killjoys by My Chemical Romance. I love My Chemical Romance, but I got into them actually quite late. I got into them right when they dropped this album, and this was the second album from theirs that I really connected with. When I was in high school, I listened to their 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge album a little bit. It was a little too screamo for me, it was a little too emo for me, I didn't quite connect with it at the time. But it wasn't until much later on, it wasn't until I started actually working. And actually at the time I was working at a shoe store, and I just needed a little bit of that angst to get me through that day. I quickly picked up the Black Parade, I quickly picked up 3 Cheers, but it's actually with Danger Days that I really had a lot of fun with, especially with those opening tracks of, you know, na 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 na. Sing is a beautiful track, and it's odd that it's getting a lot of recognition even though it's very different than a lot of their other grittier works. It's much more polished, it's much more radio friendly. It even got on Glee. But there's a few songs on there that I really like Scarecrow, I love because just of the, I guess, again, how subtle it is. And I love the overall concept. And for me, that's where this album really shines, the concept of the Killjoys. Much like The Wall, it's much more than just a single album. You really have to dive into the source material here in the album, in the graphic novels / comic books that Gerard Way wrote for it, as well as the music videos for Sing and Na 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 Na. The 3 pieces there really create the entire universe of the Killjoys, and it's for that reason alone that I have to applaud them. And one of the reasons, again, why I keep coming back, I love that world, I love getting submerged into it, and I love that escape. I also like it because it's much more polished, and it's much more well-rounded. Whereas I felt like a lot of the earlier stuff was much more gritty, it was a lot more angsty, it had a lot more of that teenage aggression that I didn't quite connect to. But Danger Days I definitely connected to. So I, again, keep coming back to it again and again.